Joining us to talk about the likelihood of that happening, there he is our guy, legal analyst Vikas Bajaj. Vic, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you.
This came down early this morning, our time, of course, South Africa being ahead. Your reaction to her verdict?
Not surprised. I was not surprised in the slightest bit. It wasn't the verdict that surprised me. It was the logic behind the verdict. In other words, what she said, in essence, is that the court, do not believe Mr. Pistorius intended to kill anyone. However, I believe it was so egregious and so negligent to take a loaded firearm as a trained firearm user, because he had training for using the firearms, and pointing it at a closed door, knowing a human being was on the other side of the door, and discharging the firearm 4 times.
Regardless if it was an intruder or not.
Regardless of intruder or not. But he understood there was an individual on the other side of the door. Whether he really thought it was the lady or he thought it was an intruder is really irrelevant. But what really surprised me was the logic behind the verdict. How can you on one hand say, well, I don't think you intended to kill anyone, but on the other hand say you took a loaded firearm as a trained firearm user and shot where you thought a human being was on the other side of a door. So I wasn't surprised by the verdict. There are just so many forces in the South African judicial system that have been investigated. I think there's over 1,700 officials that have had some hand in corruption in the judicial system since 2009. So I can't tell you I was surprised with the verdict. I was definitely surprised with the logic.
Okay, so on that topic then, I mean, I would assume that you probably think that it's likely that she could convict him then of the manslaughter charge, the lesser of the charge.
I think she's kind of put herself in that corner, so to speak. Her logic in acquitting him and discharging him on the premeditated murder count is exactly the logic that will almost force her hand, I believe, in finding him guilty of culpable murder. I just believe that that's what's going to happen. And the reason why is you can kind of read between the lines. You can read the judge's demeanor. Now, she's 66 years old, and I think she's the second lady appointed after the apartheid duration as a woman on the bench. And so she has quite a bit of clout and experience. But you could see her eyes peering down at Pistorius, sort of saying to him, you know what you did was wrong. How could you do it? How could you be this negligent?
Right.
And so you'd be hard-pressed to believe that on one hand she would be that disparaging towards the accused in this case, and on the other hand come back tomorrow morning and say, yeah, you were really negligent, but I'm going to find you not guilty of this as well, and then perhaps find a guilty finding on something such as negligent discharge of a firearm. I just believe her logic puts her in a corner where she may have to, at this point in time, find him guilty of a serious charge, which would be the culpable murder charge.
Right, and interesting because this judge has, even today, kind of criticized him for his actions, Pistorius' actions, that is, on the stand when he got all emotional, and she kind of was like, you didn't really handle yourself very well there. Vic, let me ask you, some people have been comparing this online at least to a potential O.J. Simpson similar case, right? Pistorius is this big celebrity figure in South Africa. We know, of course, what happened in the O.J. Simpson trial. Do you think there's some validity to that?
It's apples and oranges, to be frank with you. I don't see any analogy there. You have well-known figures. I've represented well-known figures, and I get a lot of hate mail all the time and say, well, you're hoping for an O.J. Simpson verdict. Same situation here. It's apples and oranges. O.J. Simpson was a forensic case. O.J. Simpson was a case where the integrity of the Los Angeles Police Department was put in the crosshairs and right in front of the jury. There are things that were in play in the O.J. Simpson case that will never rear its head in this case. They haven't, they won't in the future. In my opinion, it's apples and oranges. I want to correct one thing, though. You made a comment where you said the judge sort of addressed him and said you didn't, do the right thing. I don't think that's what the judge said. The judge really said, you lied. And that's a very troubling statement for the defense because she was very critical of his testimony. In other words, what she is saying is, Mr. Pistorius, you lied on the stand. You may have been mistaken, I understand, confused, in a rage. I don't know what the situation may be. Maybe you blacked out, but you lied. That's really what she said. And that's, again, another element that leads me to believe that she's hard-pressed to not find him guilty of the next highest charge.
Right, which we will find out sometime tomorrow in South Africa. Vikas Bajaj for us, thank you so much for your insight.
You're always welcome. Thank you.